The day everything changed started like any other. Morning at Summit Strategies, Inc. I was carrying a stack of files to the 10th floor when I heard Bradley Cooper's voice through the conference room door. That intern girl _Madison, right? She thinks she knows better than us. Can you believe it? My heart stopped. They were talking about me. She's just the help. Vanessa Price laughed, her voice dripping with condescension. Let her carry our coffee and stay quiet. That's all she's good for anyway. I pressed myself against the wall, listening to them mock the solution I'd suggested yesterday. The solution that could save our biggest client. The solution they were about to steal and present as their own brilliant idea. My name is Madison Clark. I'm 24 years old, fresh out of Boston University with a degree in business analytics and crushing student loan debt. For 6 months, I've been invisible at Boston's most powerful consulting firm, treated like furniture that occasionally brought coffee. But what happened next would make them all remember my name forever. 3 months earlier, I walked through Summit Strategies' glass doors with my heart pounding and my best interview suit pressed to perfection. The lobby was all marble and chrome, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Boston Harbor. It screamed success and power. Everything I desperately wanted, but felt so far from achieving. You're the new intern? Lauren Hayes, the CEO's secretary, looked me up and down like she was assessing damaged goods. Her perfectly manicured nails tapped against her mahogany desk. You'll be working with the strategy division on the 15th floor. They'll tell you what to do. What they told me to do was devastatingly simple. Carry files. Make copies. Organize their chaos. And most importantly, bring coffee to important meetings where real decisions happened, meetings where I wasn't allowed to speak, only to serve and disappear. Madison! Bradley Cooper snapped his fingers at me during my first week, not even looking up from his laptop. He was 32, Harvard MBA, and treated everyone beneath his level like they were invisible. Conference room B needs coffee for 12 people. And make sure it's actually hot this time. Make sure it's actually hot this time. Not the lukewarm garbage you brought yesterday. I nodded and smiled, swallowing the humiliation. Always smile, my mother taught me during those long nights when she worked 2 jobs to keep us afloat. Even when they treat you like you don't matter, especially then. Smile and prove them wrong with your work. But here's what they didn't know about me. While I served their coffee and pretended to be invisible, I listened to every word. While I organized their files and cleaned their messes, I read everything that crossed my desk. And while they ignored me completely, I was solving their problems in my head, running calculations and seeing patterns they were too arrogant to notice. The Henderson Industries case had them stumped for weeks. Thomas Henderson owned a massive manufacturing company that was hemorrhaging money, and Summit's best minds, the ones with the fancy degrees and 6-figure salaries, couldn't figure out why. They'd been working the account for 2 months, burning through billable hours like wildfire, with nothing to show for it. During one particularly tense meeting in mid-October, I was refilling Bradley's coffee when he slammed his hand on the conference table. Their production numbers don't make sense. Everything looks perfect on paper, but they're losing millions every quarter. I almost spoke up then. Almost told them about the pattern I'd noticed in the shipping manifests I'd been filing for weeks. The glaring inefficiency that was so obvious once you actually looked at the data, instead of just talking about looking at it. But Vanessa shot me a look that could freeze hell over. Stay in your lane, coffee girl, her eyes said without her mouth having to move. So I stayed quiet, bit my tongue, and watched them fail, meeting after meeting, presentation after presentation. This is absolutely embarrassing. Jordan Mitchell complained during another fruitless strategy session, running his hands through his perfectly styled hair. Henderson is our biggest client. If we can't solve this, they'll fire us and hire McKinsey. Do you know what that would do to our reputation? Still, I said nothing. Because who listens to the intern who just carries coffee and files papers? Who believes the girl with state school credentials when the room is full of Ivy League graduates? 2 weeks later, I was rushing to catch the elevator after staying late to organize Bradley's disaster of a filing system when the doors started closing. A hand stopped them just in time, and I found myself face to face with Ethan Montgomery, CEO of Summit Strategies. I'd seen him in pictures around the office and in business magazines, but never this close. He was tall and imposing, probably in his early 40s, with silver at his temples and the kind of sharp, tailored suit that cost more than I made in 3 months. But it was his eyes that caught me off guard. Intelligent, calculating, like he was always 3 steps ahead of everyone else in the room. "Which floor?" he asked, his voice carrying the kind of authority that made people listen. 15, sir. My voice came out smaller than I intended. The elevator climbed in comfortable silence. I could smell his expensive cologne and tried not to fidget with the stack of files in my arms. Then he spoke again, and my world tilted. "You work with the strategy division, right? On the Henderson case." My pulse quickened. How did he even know I existed? "Yes, sir. I'm just the intern, though. I mainly handle filing and administrative tasks. Intern or not, you've been in those meetings. You've seen the presentations, heard the discussions. What do you think is going wrong?" This was it. My moment. I could stay quiet like always, keep my head down, play it safe. Or I could speak the truth that had been burning inside me for weeks. "Their shipping schedules," I said quietly, my voice barely audible over the elevator's hum. He turned to look at me directly, and I felt like he was seeing right through me. "What about them?" "They ship their heaviest materials on Mondays and Fridays when freight rates are highest. Light materials get shipped Tuesday through Thursday when rates are lowest. But their production runs are completely backwards. They're manufacturing heavy products when they should be making light ones, and vice versa. It's costing them extra shipping fees every single day, and nobody's connecting the dots." The elevator dinged at the 15th floor. Ethan Montgomery stared at me for 5 long seconds that felt like an eternity. Then slowly, he smiled. "What's your name?" "Madison Clark, sir. Madison Clark." He repeated it like he was memorizing it, filing it away for later use. "Thank you. That's very insightful." The doors opened and I stepped out on shaking legs. But as they closed, I heard him say something that made my heart race and my hands tremble. "Lauren, clear my schedule for this afternoon. I need to make some calls." The next morning, Lauren Hayes appeared at my tiny desk in the corner of the strategy division's bullpen like a perfectly dressed messenger from another world. "Mr. Montgomery wants to see you in conference room and now." My hands shook as I walked down the hall, past the offices of people who made 10 times my salary, toward the most important meeting room in the building. Conference room A was where they held board meetings, where million-dollar deals were made and careers were destroyed. I'd only been inside to clean it after hours. Ethan was waiting with a stack of papers spread across the mahogany table and a laptop open in front of him. "Sit down, Madison." I sat in the leather chair across from him, trying not to think about how out of place I felt. "I spent 4 hours last night checking your theory about Henderson Industries." His voice was matter of fact, but there was something underneath it, approval, maybe even admiration. "You were right. Completely, devastatingly right. Their shipping inefficiency is costing them approximately $3.2 million annually." My heart jumped into my throat. "Really?" "Really. I had my people run the numbers 3 different ways. The pattern is undeniable once you know where to look." He leaned back in his chair. "But here's the problem. The strategy division thinks they've solved it. They're presenting their solution to Thomas Henderson tomorrow morning. But they didn't solve anything. They don't even know about the shipping schedules. They're focused on workforce reduction and supply chain reorganization." "I know. That's why I have a job for you." He slid a thick folder across the table toward me. "I want you to write the real solution. The complete plan. Every detail, every number, every implementation step. Can you do that?" I stared at the folder like it might bite me. This was bigger than anything I'd ever attempted. More responsibility than anyone had ever given me. "Yes, sir. I can do it." "Good. But Madison, this stays between us. Absolute confidentiality. No one else can know what you're working on." "Why the secrecy?" His eyes went hard. And for a moment I saw the steel underneath his polished exterior. Because I want to see who tries to steal your work. I want to see exactly what kind of people I have running my strategy division. I spent the next 3 days and nights on that report, barely sleeping, surviving on coffee and determination. I built comprehensive charts showing exactly how Henderson could save millions. I created detailed implementation schedules that would cut their costs by 40% within 6 months. I analyzed their entire operation from top to bottom, finding inefficiencies they didn't even know existed. It was 73 pages of pure, concentrated brilliance, the best work I'd ever produced in my life. I delivered it to Ethan on Thursday morning, my hands trembling as I placed it on his desk. He read every single page in silence while I sat there trying not to hyperventilate. Finally, he looked up. "Perfect," he said, and the single word felt like the greatest compliment I'd ever received. "Now we wait." "Wait for what?" "For tomorrow's meeting. The big presentation where everyone shows Thomas Henderson their solutions." "But sir, they'll just present their wrong answers. They'll embarrass themselves." He smiled, but it wasn't entirely pleasant. "That's exactly what I'm counting on." Friday morning arrived with dark storm clouds gathering over Boston Harbor. I arrived early, like always, to set up conference room A for what everyone was calling the most important presentation in Summit's recent history. 12 executives would be there, including Thomas Henderson flying in from Chicago specifically for this meeting. The outcome would determine not just the Henderson account, but Summit's reputation in the industry. "Coffee for everyone," Bradley ordered as I arranged the chairs around the massive conference table. "And Madison, try not to spill anything today. We can't afford any amateur mistakes with important people coming." Vanessa laughed from her seat, where she was shuffling through her presentation materials. "Don't worry, Brad. She's gotten good at staying invisible." "That's about the only thing she's good at," Jordan chuckled along. "As long as she keeps the coffee flowing, she serves her purpose. If only they knew what was coming. If only they could see the bomb that was about to explode their arrogant little world." At 10 o'clock sharp, the room filled with expensive suits and nervous energy. Thomas Henderson looked exactly like his photos, mid-50s. Silver hair, tired eyes, and the bearing of a man who'd built an empire from nothing but was watching it slowly crumble. He was flanked by 3 board members who looked equally concerned about their company's mysterious financial hemorrhaging. "Gentlemen, ladies," Ethan said, taking his seat at the head of the table with the calm confidence of someone who knew exactly how this was going to play out. "Thank you all for coming. Let's hear your solutions for Henderson Industries." Bradley went first, standing at the front with his PowerPoint clicker like he was delivering a TED Talk. He had impressive charts and colorful graphs, but they were all wrong. He talked about streamlining operations and optimizing workforce allocation and leveraging synergistic efficiencies. Big, important-sounding words that meant absolutely nothing. Thomas Henderson looked bored within the first 5 minutes. Vanessa went next with her presentation on supply chain management optimization and vendor relationship restructuring. Also completely wrong, but delivered with the kind of confidence that comes from never being challenged. Jordan's presentation focused on systematic cost-cutting measures and operational efficiency improvements. Still wrong, still missing the actual problem entirely. One by one, they presented solutions that sounded impressive but would never work. And with each failed presentation, I could see Thomas Henderson's frustration growing. His company was bleeding money, and Summit's best minds were giving him band-aids for a severed artery. Finally, after an hour of corporate buzzwords and meaningless charts, Ethan spoke. "Interesting proposals, everyone. Very thorough presentations." His voice was neutral, giving nothing away. "But before we proceed with implementation discussions, I'd like to ask our Henderson expert a question." All eyes turned expectantly to the 3 strategy division executives. Who among them was the Henderson expert? Ethan stood up slowly, walked across the room with measured steps, and stopped directly in front of me, where I was standing against the wall with an empty coffee pot clutched in my hands like a shield. "Madison, would you mind sharing your analysis?" The room went dead silent. You could have heard a pin drop on the marble floor. Sir, I whispered, sure I had misheard. Your analysis of the Henderson Industries case. I'd very much like to hear your perspective. Bradley's face went white as sheet. Sir, she's just the intern. She doesn't know anything about complex business operations. She knows more than all of you combined, Ethan said calmly, his voice cutting through Bradley's protests like a knife. Madison? Every eye in the room was on me now, 12 executives, 4 board members, 1 very confused client, and the CEO who had just thrown me into the deepest end of the pool imaginable. My voice shook as I began to speak. The problem isn't workforce optimization or supply chain management. It's shipping schedules coordinated with production timing. Thomas Henderson leaned forward in his chair. Shipping schedules? Explain. I took a deep breath and found my courage. Sir, you ship your heaviest materials, steel components, industrial machinery on Mondays and Fridays when freight rates are at their weekly peak. But your production schedule manufactures those heavy items Tuesday through Thursday when you should be making lighter products for midweek shipping. You're essentially paying premium shipping rates for everything when a simple schedule adjustment could save millions. The room was so quiet I could hear the air conditioning and the distant sound of Boston traffic through the windows. Thomas Henderson's eyes went wide. Show me the numbers. Ethan walked to his briefcase and pulled out my report, the one I'd spent 3 days perfecting, 73 pages of detailed analysis that would change everything. This is Madison's complete logistics restructuring plan for Henderson Industries, Ethan said, placing it in front of Thomas Henderson. She identified the shipping schedule problem 3 weeks ago. Thomas opened the report and began reading. The room held its breath as he flipped through page after page of charts, graphs, and cost projections. His board members leaned over to look, their expressions changing from skepticism to amazement. This is incredible, Thomas said finally, looking up at me. You're telling me I can save over $5 million a year just by changing when I manufacture different products? Yes, sir. And that's just the shipping savings. If you implement the full plan, including the warehouse optimization strategies I outlined on pages 40 through 55, you could save even more. Bradley tried to interrupt, his voice desperate. Sir, we were going to mention shipping considerations in Phase 2 of our comprehensive plan. Phase 2? Thomas Henderson's voice was sharp with disbelief. Son, you never even identified Phase 1 correctly. This young lady found the real problem while you were talking about firing my employees. Vanessa looked like she might be sick. Mr. Henderson, surely our supply chain analysis contributed to the overall understanding. Your supply chain analysis was completely irrelevant to the actual problem. Thomas cut her off. Then he turned back to me. Miss Clark, how long did it take you to figure this out? About 3 weeks, sir. Once I had access to your shipping manifests and production schedules, the pattern was pretty clear. 3 weeks. Thomas looked around the room at the executives, who'd been working the case for 2 months. And how long have these consultants been working on my account? 8 weeks, Ethan answered quietly. Thomas Henderson closed my report and stood up. The entire room tensed, waiting for his verdict like defendants awaiting a jury's decision. This is embarrassing, he said, but he wasn't looking at me. He was staring directly at Bradley, Vanessa, and Jordan. I've been paying Summit Strategies premium consulting fees for 2 months to get answers from people with Harvard MBAs and decades of experience. And the solution comes from an intern who's been filing my paperwork. The silence was deafening. Thomas walked over to where I was standing, still clutching my empty coffee pot like armor against the surreal situation. He extended his hand to me. Miss Clark, I don't know how much Summit pays you, but it's not enough. You just saved my company millions of dollars. Thank you. I shook his hand with trembling fingers. You're welcome, sir. He turned back to Ethan. I want her on my implementation team. Not them. He gestured dismissively toward the strategy division. Her. That can be arranged, Ethan said, and I caught something that looked like deep satisfaction in his eyes. Furthermore, Thomas continued, I'm doubling Henderson Industries' contract with Summit Strategies with one condition. Miss Clark leads the project, My knees nearly buckled. Sir, I'm not qualified to. You're the only one here who is qualified, Thomas said firmly. You're the only one who actually understands my business. After Thomas Henderson and his board left, promising to implement my restructuring plan immediately, the conference room felt like a battlefield after the smoke had cleared. The 3 strategy division executives sat in stunned silence, their failed presentations scattered across the table like casualties of war. Ethan remained standing at the head of the table, his expression unreadable but somehow satisfied. That was quite a show, he said finally. Anyone want to explain to me how you missed something so obvious? Sir, Bradley stammered, his usual confidence completely shattered. We had different approaches. We were looking at bigger picture issues. Bigger picture? Ethan's voice could cut glass. The bigger picture is that for 8 weeks, you ignored the person with the right answer because she was just the intern. Vanessa tried to defend herself, her voice weak. We didn't know she had any insights. She never spoke up during meetings. She didn't speak up because every time she tried, you shut her down. I've seen the meeting notes, Vanessa. I've watched the recordings. Every suggestion Madison made was either dismissed or stolen. Jordan shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Sir, we didn't realize. You didn't realize because you never bothered to look. You were too busy protecting your egos to see the talent right in front of you. Ethan walked slowly around the conference table, his footsteps echoing in the silence. Madison, he said without turning around, tell them about the other ideas you've had. The ones that somehow became their innovations. My mouth went dry, but after feeling invisible for so long, the truth came pouring out. The Morrison account filing system that saved 20 hours a week, I said quietly. That was my suggestion. Bradley presented it as his innovation to management. Bradley's face went red. The legal issue I spotted in the Peterson merger contract, I continued. Stronger now. The clause that could have cost millions if we'd missed it. Vanessa, you put your name on the memo that fixed it. Vanessa couldn't meet my eyes. The cost-benefit analysis for the Williams contract negotiations. The risk assessment that made the deal possible. Jordan. That was my work too. Jordan stared at his hands like they held the answers to questions he was afraid to ask. 6 months, Ethan said, his voice deadly quiet. 6 months of stolen ideas. 6 months of treating your most valuable team member like she was worthless. Mr. Montgomery. Bradley tried to speak. Don't. Just don't. Ethan's voice was ice cold. Here's what's going to happen. Madison Clark is being promoted to senior strategy consultant, effective immediately. My heart stopped. Sir, you heard me correctly. And you'll be leading the Henderson Industries implementation team. Full project authority. But sir, you're not just anything anymore, Madison. You're the consultant who just secured the biggest contract in Summit's history. He turned back to the 3 executives who looked like they'd been hit by a truck. As for you 3, you're being transferred. Bradley, you'll be working in accounts receivable. Vanessa, human resources has an opening. Jordan, our Portland office needs someone to handle client communications. Sir, please, Vanessa pleaded. Surely we can discuss this. There's nothing to discuss. You had your chance to recognize talent when you saw it. Instead, you chose to suppress it, steal from it, and humiliate it. The consequences are yours to bear. 6 months later, I sat in my corner office on the 18th floor watching the sun set over Boston Harbor. My nameplate read Madison Clark, Senior Strategy Consultant, in elegant gold lettering that still made me smile every time I saw it. The Henderson implementation had been a massive success, finishing 2 months ahead of schedule and saving them even more money than projected. Word had spread through the industry, and Advanced Strategic Solutions, the new division Ethan had created for me to run, was booked solid for the next year. Lauren Hayes knocked on my doorframe. Madison, the quarterly numbers are in. Advanced Strategic Solutions generated $42 million in revenue this quarter. That's incredible news. Mr. Montgomery wants to see you in his office. I walked up to the 20th floor, past the offices that had once seemed so intimidating, to Ethan's corner suite overlooking the harbor. You wanted to see me, sir? Madison, sit down. I want to tell you something I should have shared months ago. I settled into the leather chair across from his desk. I've been watching you since your first day here. Not because I suspected you were brilliant, though you obviously are, but because I was once exactly where you were. Sir? 30 years ago, I was an intern at a firm just like this one. Goldman and Associates. I had good ideas, innovative solutions, but no one would listen. They treated me like I was invisible, like I was nothing more than a servant who occasionally had thoughts. What happened? I left, started my own consulting firm with nothing but $1,000 loan and absolute determination. Built it from the ground up, client by client, success by success. And I swore that if I ever ran a company like Summit, I would never let talent go unrecognized, no matter where it came from. That's why you helped me. That's why I tested everyone. I wanted to see who would steal your work, and who would give you credit. I wanted to know exactly what kind of people I had running my divisions. He handed me an envelope, thick and official looking. Your bonus for the Henderson contract and the Advanced Strategic Solutions launch. Plus a little extra for believing in yourself when no one else would. I opened it. The number made my head spin and my hands shake. Sir, this is too much. It's exactly what you earned. And Madison? Yes, sir. There's something else. I'm expanding Advanced Strategic Solutions into a full subsidiary. I want you to run it. Your own company within the company. Your own team, your own clients, your own decisions. What do you say? I thought about every time someone had told me to stay quiet. Every time they'd made me feel small. Every time they'd treated me like I didn't matter. I thought about the scared intern who used to carry coffee and apologize for existing. I say yes, sir. Absolutely yes. 1 year later, I stood at the front of conference room A, presenting quarterly results to the entire executive committee, the same room where I'd once been invisible, where I'd served coffee and been dismissed as just the help. That evening, I called my mother from my office as the city lights began twinkling below. Mom, remember what you taught me about always smiling, even when people treat you badly? Of course, honey. Why? I've learned something even better than smiling. What's that? Proving them wrong. And then proving you were right all along. She laughed, and I could hear the pride in her voice. That's my girl. I always knew you'd show them. As I hung up the phone and looked out at the Boston skyline, I thought about that scared intern who used to carry coffee for people who didn't respect her, who made herself small so others could feel big, who apologized for having ideas. She was gone now, transformed into someone who knew her worth and wouldn't settle for less. In her place stood someone who understood that success isn't just about proving you can do the job, it's about proving you were always meant to lead, even when nobody else could see it. Sometimes the people who treat you like you're nothing are just afraid you'll realize you're everything they're not. Success isn't just about proving you can do the job, it's about proving you were always meant to lead, even when the world tries to convince you otherwise.